exams were complete. He was arraigned for that charge on August 4, 1994. And then, less than 2 months before his scheduled release, Craig Price finally began his psychiatric evaluations. Judge Jeremiah had already ordered him held past his 21st birthday regarding the contempt of court charge to complete the drafting of his rehabilitation program should there be one. The ACLU was not impressed, feeling as though Craig Price was being held to a different set of rules. The exams were conducted by highly respected Dr. Richard Barnum, who evaluated him 3 times, interviewed his parents, the prosecutors, defense attorneys, Child Protective Services, as well as reviewed records from the training school, all public schools, police records and reports, and juvenile court. Dr. Barnum's ultimate diagnosis was antisocial personality disorder, a sociopath, and likely narcissistic personality disorder. Dr. Barnum also corroborated a conclusion made by Dr. Wesley Prophet in 1990 that Craig Price showed signs of being a disorganized serial murderer. Many indicators existed which signaled Craig's obvious need for psychiatric treatment, preferably in a secure environment treating men with like issues. Dr. Barnum stated that civil commitment would be an appropriate measure to ensure the safety of the public. 10 days later, jury selection in his trial began, at the same time the jury was being seated in California in the O.J. Simpson case. It took the entire week, twice as long as the remainder of the trial would last, and it began on October 3, 1994, 1 week before his 21st birthday. Guard Petrella took the stand describing the situation leading up to the incident. Other witnesses did as well, and Craig himself took the stand. He said Petrella had been sneaky, acting like he wasn't going to write him up, but then doing so. Craig also used his time on the stand to raise the specter of a conspiracy perpetuated to keep him locked up past his birthday, calling the Attorney General's office the main culprit. He pointed out that he was almost done serving his time. The jury deliberated on Thursday, October 6th and Friday, October 7th, and Craig was found guilty on both counts. At his sentencing on December 1st, 1994, his attorney implored that Craig Price be sentenced strictly for the verbal threats and not to add additional punishment for crimes he was already sentenced for. The defense requested no additional jail time. The state pointed out that, while the threats were certainly inappropriate and illegal, the individual that made them had already savagely slaughtered 2 women and 2 innocent children while he was still a child. Prosecutors requested the maximum sentence, 16 years. Craig prepared a letter of allocution, which he read before the court. I must have written this letter over 1,000 times in my mind. The hardest part has always been the beginning. Whom do I address? The state of Rhode Island, the media, the courts, or the nation? Where should I start? At the beginning of this nightmare or the present? I've contemplated these thoughts for a long time, and I decided to start at the beginning. I was 15 years old and charged and convicted as a juvenile for one of the most hideous crimes in the state of Rhode Island, quadruple homicide. Prior to my sentencing, during public outcry, arrest, court proceedings, and the hostile publicity disseminated by the media, to say I was scared would be an understatement. Shock, terrified, confused are the only words I could think of, and the circumstances surrounding my situation. So needless to say, I entered a guilty plea. I was fully prosecuted as a juvenile under Rhode Island state law, or so I thought. 15 years old is an age of naivete. I've learned much more about the suppressive system since then. Presently, I've been railroaded and found guilty of assault and extortion, and the $500,000 bail isn't due to the severity of the alleged crime. The fact is, I'm being prosecuted again as an adult for the charges I pled to as a juvenile. Assault and extortion is just a lousy camouflage. This type of retroactive prosecution will continue for anything and everything the state of Rhode Island and its agents can conjure up, until I speak out against this unjust and racial treatment and total disregard for the United States Constitution, specifically related to my 14th Amendment right to due process. Never in the history of the Rhode Island Adult Correctional Institute, from the highest security supermax to the lowest work released or training school for that matter, has an inmate been treated and charged like I have for an institutional discipline report on words, threats, and gestures. Judge, the media has once again done a good job of creating a monster, a boogeyman no one wants to see in their dreams, let alone living across the street from. Not just any boogeyman, mind you, but a black boogeyman. Some are probably saying to my last statement, oh, here comes the racial defense. No, not the racial defense, but the racial reality. Color does make a difference and definitely brings about a lynch mob atmosphere, media lynching, court lynching, and state lynching. 30 or 40 years ago, Craig Price would have been burned at the stake in the town square or hung in some remote area. Today, courtrooms and prisons will have to suffice, a modern substitute. Let's be real. Rhode Island is over 90% Caucasian, yet blacks occupy 40% of the prison population. Do you think these statistics are because we are genetically inferior or more prone toward crime than Caucasians? Running through the minds of many citizens, not only am I seen as a convicted murderer, but I'm also seen as an N-word. I've seen it in the many blue eyes and heard it in the many thoughts. Even a high official from the Attorney General's office, while I was in court, whispered the word as I walked by in the courtroom. As a black youth, you know, I have two burdens to cross. As a white youth, I would only have one. As a black, I have two, N-word and murderer. What I demand from the state and the courts is equality. Equality in a country whose scales of justice have not been balanced for blacks for over 400 years. This letter isn't only for, Craig Price. It's also a voice for the thousands of black youths who are struggling against the same tentacles of oppression. I was totally wrong that night, Your Honor. I got hot under the collar. I got mad at the guy. I yelled at him. I never threatened the guy. Never once did I say I'm gonna snuff you. I feel bad for Mark Petrella in a way because they put him in the mix like that. He's state of Rhode Island, just a worker. He's gotta do something like that now. They want him to roll with it, you know what I mean? He phonies up a document. That's all it was, a misunderstanding. The guy tried to write me up so I could get more days in lockup, and it progressed to this. Why? The state of Rhode Island doesn't want Craig Price out in 5 years. Let's look for something. Totally wrong what they're doing. To have the Attorney General sit here and say everything was professional and they did it fair? I mean, you can be the judge for that yourself. Everybody can see it. I mean, there's a lot more that I'd like to say, but I guess I'll just cut it off here, Your Honor. The judge was visibly shocked and immediately called a 3-hour recess. He returned and read his own statement. I saw a different Craig Price today in the courtroom when he addressed the court. I saw a young Craig Price during the trial. I was impressed with Craig Price during the trial. I saw a very angry man today. Rarely did he address the court. Perhaps he was addressing the nation or the state, but he is angry. I left the court this morning because I wanted to digest what I had seen. I reject Mr. Young's approach to impose the maximum of 16 years. I reject Mr. Mann's approach as well. In rejecting your approach, Mr. Young's, I find that such a sentence of 16 years to serve would be tantamount to sentencing this defendant again for the crimes he committed when he was 13 and 15, and I will not become a party to that. Mr. Mann, in rejecting your recommendation of no jail time, I'm taking into consideration everything that I've read as it relates to this defendant. Dr. Barnum has told us that, based upon his examination, he's in need of treatment. I feel Craig Price has made progress. I believe, however, that from everything I've read, there is a propensity for violence in this defendant. That propensity, in my judgment, came through in shocking reality during the allocution of this defendant. He was a different man in this courtroom than when I saw him last on the stand as a witness. It has brought into focus in my mind the evaluations that have been made by psychiatrists and by those people who, by training, have the medical experience to make those judgments. In the last analysis, however, the sentencing function belongs to the judge. I believe Craig Price is in need of treatment and custodial care. The act which he stands convicted of is a violent one. I believe that a period of incarceration is needed to grant Craig Price that opportunity to receive that treatment and to continue to progress. I believe that there is every indication of a repetition of violent conduct. I'm going to sentence Craig Price to 15 years on the extortion count. I will suspend 8 of those years. I believe that 7 years to serve provides the opportunity for continued growth and an opportunity for treatment. He then received 1 year for simple assault. In July 1997, Craig was finally tried on the contempt charge and sentenced to a whopping 25 years, with 10 to be served consecutive to his current sentence and 15 years probation. He then addressed the court saying, "Okay, I don't want to sound disrespectful to this court or anything, but I mean, it's very hard to come out and say this. This sentence itself cannot take the fact that I'm sorry for the homicides. I'm sorry for everything of that. But the sentence of 10 years, whether you know it or not, is definitely to life in jail. There's no way I'm going to skate through 10 years of jail doing the right thing or anything like that. There's an environment that I'm in. It's too much and too hectic. I can't sit here and be fake about it. I'm telling the court how I feel. The hope I had is, it seems like you've just taken it away. Right now in my heart and my mind, this sentence is just like life." While he had been waiting for that trial to begin, Craig Price had been charged with the assault of 2 corrections officers at the Adult Corrections Institute. The state had added 1 year using the violation of parole to prosecute. That brought his sentence to 8, then the 10-year sentence, and now it's 18 years. The state successfully used the violation of parole to prosecute Craig again in autumn 1998 on the contempt of court charges, adding another consecutive sentence of 8 years, making the new total since his 21st birthday 26 years. His tentative release date was 2019 with good behavior. In 2001, he assaulted an inmate with a pen and was sentenced to 7 years, with 6 suspended in 2002. 2002 also brought his first shot at parole, however it was denied. He waived the opportunity to apply for parole in spring of 2004. In October 2004, the people of Rhode Island got a wish granted and Craig Price was moved to the Santa Rosa Correctional Institution in Florida to finish out his time. In 2009, while in an altercation with another inmate, he stabbed a corrections officer in the hand with the homemade shiv and was charged with 4 counts of battery on a law enforcement officer. On April 6, 2010, he was sentenced to 2.5 years. By 2014, Craig was now housed at Sewanee Correctional Institution, where he spit on a corrections officer on December 11th and was charged with an additional probation violation, along with another count for a different fight in 2015. On April 4th, 2017, prison video showed Craig Price enter the cell of Joshua Davis and stab him, even chasing him down as he tried to get away. Premeditated, and prosecutors said he was out to kill. Arraigned in August of 2017, Craig refused to plead to the charge, repeatedly throwing legal jargon at the court and causing multiple delays. Then in late November 2018, attorney Michael Bryant received an extension to have a competency evaluation completed on his client, floating the idea of mounting an insanity defense should trial ever get underway. The evaluations were complete in December, and on January 18, 2019, Craig Price pleaded guilty and received a sentence of 25 years for stabbing the prison guard, plus a consecutive 10-year sentence for possessing contraband. This sentence will run consecutive to his current sentences, making him now eligible for parole in 2044. He will be 71 years old. As we end this, we can't gloss over the amazing campaign begun by Kevin Collins of the Warwick PD, Attorney General Jeffrey Pine, Joan Heaton's mother and sister, and Becky Spencer's brother. At the end of June 1993, that group, plus about